out of the ordinary insights. Brought to you by Investec Specialist Bank.
You're watching Captains of Industry here on CNBC Africa, and I'm speaking to Sello Moloko, the chairperson of Alexander Forbes. Let's talk about your leadership style. How do you define it?
I think my leadership style involves ensuring that I'm surrounded by people with a modicum of intellect. And that means, that means that I allow people to go out there and do what they have to do. So I set out very clear direction, and then they have to go out there and do what they seek to do. So I'm not a control freak. I'm not this sort of executive. I work with people. I work in partnership with my executives, and I work in an environment where there's mutual respect. And if people don't deliver, then you take appropriate action. But however, you just allow them to go out there and do what needs to be done.
Given your background, your educational background, do you have a preference for actuaries?
I don't necessarily have a preference for actuaries per se. I have a preference for very intelligent people. And those intelligent people come from all walks of life. I mean, I've worked with accountants, I've worked with geologists, engineers. I've worked with some incredibly smart people. And I've come to accept the fact that, to be successful, you need diversity. If you take a guy like Edward Kiswetter, he's an engineer and a teacher. But if you take other people I've worked with some incredibly smart people who are not actuaries. So I'm not biased towards actuaries, no.
In terms of mistakes that you've made in your corporate career, can you share any of those milestones with us, if there are any?
No, look, I've made some mistakes. I've made some mistakes in terms of people choices, and that in some instances that I've had to live with, where you make a mistake in hiring people.
That's a difficult mistake to make, because it's very difficult to retrace on it given current legislation.
Sure, but at times as well, there's the legislative aspect. There's also the time when a person presents themselves to you in an interview. They may present a picture that's actually not the case. So I've made some mistakes in terms of hiring people. I've made some mistakes, myself in my career through the use of derivatives. I've been bitten once by derivatives, not in a big way, but I learned my lesson there about the careful use of them. But other than that, there's no one who's perfect out there.
How do you deal with mistakes? Because again, people watching this show are looking at you and saying, you're a captain of industry. It's refreshing to hear that people make mistakes, and I think the important thing is lessons learned when you do make them.
I think the key thing is to be humble when you've made a mistake, and to own the mistake. It's a mature thing to do, it's an adult thing to do, to actually go out there and say, look, I've made this mistake. And sometimes it's very painful, if you're a kind of a high achieving person and you make that mistake and people look at you, you often feel, what have I done? But it's to be mature enough to understand that you're human, and as I say, to err is human, and learn from those mistakes and make sure that you actually never make the same mistake again.
I recently had Shamil Yusuf, the CEO of Vodacom, Stephen Kossov, the CEO of Investec, in that hot seat, and we were discussing balance. And both of them feel that in the early days of any captain's life, there is no balance. Do you agree?
I agree. It's often very difficult to achieve big things with balance. We often, are told by our partners or our wives about the work-life balance. But when you have a driven individual, balance is often a problem in the early days. I think you achieve it in the fullness of time.
But it is about hard work and dedication and passion and discipline, and it's not about leaving the office after 8 hours.
No, sure. I mean, I found that, at the time, particularly when I was very full-time, you find that by the time you walk into the office at 7:30 or 8 o'clock, you're consumed by meetings and other things, and you often find little time during the day to actually do the sort of things that you're expected to do, things that you're supposed to produce. So the captains of industry's life involves long hours. In some instances, it involves having to deal with clients after hours, a bit of travel. So yeah, balance. There's something that's got to give.
And you've also got the additional complication now of sitting on a number of boards. Is that easy?
Look, one has to manage their time quite well. So it involves proper time management, proper preparation. So yes, it does have an impact, but I suppose, one, has the capacity to test their bandwidth, and I think I've got enough bandwidth to handle what I've got on my plate.
Let's talk a bit more now about South Africa from an economic perspective. How are you feeling about the state of South Africa in the global context?
I think, what we have seen with the crisis from 2007 to now is that, our trading partners, our major trading partners, namely the US and Europe, have experienced some tough times. And as a result, we would be naturally impacted by that. Some of the hangover from the financial crisis has had an impact on companies like Alexander Forbes, in terms of the requirements on regulatory capital, the impact on banks from a Basel point of view. So, we have not, gone, unscathed. In this.
Do you think that the worst is over, or are we still in for more trouble?
I think we've seen here and there, just when you think it's almost over, Greece comes up. Just when I think it's over, then Cyprus. So I'm not so sure that the worst is over. I think we're still going to see some period of stress for probably the next three years. Probably that would be my view.
And the South African economy itself, we look at the growth rates being forecast by the Reserve Bank, and do you think that we're on track to make a 2.5% GDP growth rate for the economy?
I think, we have seen obviously the growth rates being revised downwards, given what is happening out there in the global economy. So if things stabilize in the global economy, as kind of predicted by some people, that you'll see that the stability. I'm not convinced that I think we'll see less volatility in the global markets, but but I just believe that the South African growth rates, I think those are attainable.
What about the political risk that we face in South Africa? Is it escalating? Are you concerned about news flow at the moment, or do you think that we are steady as she goes from a political perspective?
Look, I think South Africa, from time to time, we found that, we found ourselves in situations where we've spoken about news flow. When I was in asset management, it was always about news flow and the impact on the economy. So my problem is that South Africans have the capacity sometimes to overreact to situations. Some of the news has not been good, but I think it's all in the way of actually improving this economy and managing this country. So from time to time, I think we will find some bad news, but I think sometimes as South Africans we tend to overreact to those news.
I want to come back to Alexander Forbes and the type of culture that you're trying to install within this organization.
Yeah, the type of culture that we're trying to inculcate in here is a culture of a servant mindset, that we're dealing with people's assets and to make sure that we give them the correct levels of service, and that we give them comfort that their money is in safe hands. Especially
in this turbulent environment we're chatting about.
Exactly that. And that is underpinned, that service mindset that we talk about is underpinned by very strong skills, just making sure that we have competent people that can be able to manage the risk for those people. That also you have people that are very ethically biased, that we don't go back to the old days. So, and that message we drive through and through, that we've got to serve our people in a transparent manner, in an appropriate manner. And so, we're excited about that. The key thing here at Alexander Forbes is around ensuring that we have expertise underpinned by ethical service.
Now, Sello, obviously, in ensuring that you have the right people and the level of the expertise that you need, there's always the threat that people are going to leave your organization and be attracted by other brands. How do you mitigate against that risk?
Look, we've had instances where people have left for a variety of reasons. At the same time, we still have the capacity to attract people. We have actually, in the last few months, been able to attract some incredible talent. So we continue to make sure that we have an environment in which people can have fun. People can continue to be engaged and look forward to coming to work.
But you are cognizant that you need to be competitive in terms of your retention programs to hold those people down.
No, sure. We continue to be cognizant of that. We have actually engaged our people, talked about all the facets of actually ensuring that people are retained. But the biggest thing that I found in my career is that people are often loyal to an organization when they're meaningfully engaged.
Let's talk about life beyond Africa. We've just seen the BRICS summit in Durban, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and obviously with South Africa attached. Is there any potential for Alexander Forbes to play in broader emerging markets with that story on our horizon?
I think at the moment, for the next few years, I think our focus will be on growing our African footprint, and that will require a bit of focus. The emerging markets, I think we have got an eye on them, but that's something that's out in the distant horizon. It's not something that's, I don't see that happening in the next 2 years.
The proverbial question.
But we're mindful of what's going on in BRICS. We keep in touch with what's going on. We have participated in some of the BRICS forums.
The proverbial question on captains: what do you want your legacy to be, your personal legacy?
I think what's important is for people to always remember a sustainable business that one left behind. That's the most important thing. That's the first thing. So you need to leave a sustainable business behind. Secondly,
something that's going to live beyond you.
That's going to live way, way beyond me. So for me, the sustainability of business is very important. Secondly, everybody that has interfaced with me, this is just at a personal level, that people should always remember the wonderful experience that they've had fun working with me, that they've grown in the process of working with me, and that to me is a very important thing.